I came to crypto about 6 years ago, in 2017. I was probably one of the few founders who set up regulated funds to invest into crypto at that time in Luxembourg. And one of the things that really came to my attention is that blockchain as a technology is ideal tool for the traditional financial industry. But at the same time, at that particular moment, it was early 2017, there was mostly crypto-to-crypto transactions. USDT was available on some platforms, was not available on the others. And I just felt that traditional finance is the way where the technology would be developing, but the first thing that this technology would require is the settlement currency. And when we speak about the settlement currencies, indeed, this is what came to the market. But what we saw is that the market is very much came to be dominated by the dollars. It's, on one hand, quite natural. In Europe, when you're doing business, you need a permission to do business. In the US, you first do business, and then, if you one way or another break the law, you ask for forgiveness. That's the standard way the businesses are developing. So Europe has been lagging behind the US for a while. Plus, of course, US dollar is a very, very dominant currency in the traditional finances. However, the gap is too wide. Most of the transactions for the stablecoin currencies in blockchain are denominated in US dollars. What we felt is that the situation started to change early 2023, and there were a number of the events that led to it. At the beginning, there was a spat between Circle and Paxos. Paxos is a direct competitor of VNX in Europe. They also generate Paxos Gold, as well as, at that time, BUSD and USDP, which is a regulated US dollar stablecoin from Paxos. There was a spat whether Binance constitutes security or not, and there was a request from SEC to stop issuance of BUSD. It followed by depegging of Circle, which was due to their inability to withdraw $4 billion from Silicon Valley Bank, and in a very quick sequence by the adoption of MiCA, a pretty comprehensive legislation in the European Union. And we, VNX, since probably May, June last year, have been really in the spotlight of many blockchain foundations as well as different platforms, because everybody in the blockchain world understood that to some extent Europe for the next couple of years, maybe longer, will be the place to do business. Comprehensive legislation allows you to do business within the legal framework, to have access to the banks, to have access to the much wider audience being around the world, being legally compliant. So we started to receive a lot of requests. Stepping back, what drives the requests for the stable value in the blockchain? And you can, of course, divide both traditional use cases or traditional world use cases as well as blockchain or crypto-native use cases. When we speak about crypto-native use cases, I think most of the people in this room understand that in order to settle the contracts, in order to execute the transactions, you need actually a value on the blockchain, which then goes one way or another depending on what is programmed in the smart contracts. However, very quickly, the blockchain technology, especially in the developing world, has transcended into the use cases in the traditional world. Most people here do not require any assistance in access to the financial services, but let's say 6 billion in the world do. They live in the places where there is no access to the proper banking services, where the governments are either corrupt, controlled by gangsters, or too weak to protect citizens from gangsters. Therefore, one of the key use cases in the real world, if we abstract ourselves from the blockchain and crypto use cases, is actually storage of the value. So approximately 6 billion people who do lack access to the developed financial system use it as a means of storing value, saving it, passing it to the next generations, etc., etc., etc. What in addition leads to the popularity of this method is a rising inflation. So when we in Europe or in the United States complain about the inflation of, let's say, 10% per year at the peak of it, most people in the developing countries are quite happy to get that level of inflation. They sometimes need to tolerate inflation in the hundreds of percentage points. So that kind of traditional market demand, as well as, of course, issues of transacting between the individuals. That just goes without saying. If you don't have access to the traditional banking system, sending from one country to another, sending from one individual to another, is actually a big problem. So what we see is that two of those use cases combined, and they lead to a dramatic need for the use case, which, in my view, will grow further and further. As I mentioned, MiCA has been a very, very significant generator of interest to the European stablecoins. And what happened after the initial wave of the early players, such as blockchain foundations, platforms that are working in the blockchain space, there came an interest from the financial players. Stable legislation brings stability not only to the players in the crypto and blockchain space, but also brings certainty to the traditional financial players, being it banks, asset managers, exchanges, who now start to see that this technology can actually be applied to the traditional financial world. And if it is applied, then one of the biggest markets that will move on-chain is FX. There are a number of the issues why FX would be quite useful on-chain, one of them being final settlement. In traditional financial markets, no settlement is happening, or it is happening in batches, i.e. I owe you something, you owe me something, and then we clear at the end of the day. But if in the middle of the day you declare bankruptcy, all of the trades which happened beforehand, are in essence my open position to you. So finality of those settlements is actually one of the important points. Another one is instantaneous 24/7. It's understood that most of the US dollar transactions go through US, and if they happen to be in Asia when the banks are closed in the States, then it again creates an open position. That's not happening with stablecoins. There, the transaction happening immediately. So what then starts to happen is that if the traditional financial players understand that the FX market will start to move on-chain, then the second largest currency, which is traded in the traditional financial markets, is euro. VNX is a token generator for Swiss franc. It's also one of the top 10, 15 most traded and stable currencies. So there is a significant interest of the traditional financial players to this asset. Speaking a little bit about what VNX does, VNX issues 3 assets: VNX Euro, VNX Swiss franc, and VNX Gold. Overall market cap is about 10 million. We are already on 10 blockchains with Ripple coming soon. So we hope to launch our products on Ripple in the next couple of months. So those of you who are building applications, who are building DEXs, who are building peer-to-peer transaction platforms, we of course will be very happy to work with you. Please get in contact. Our address is at www.vnx.io. You will see all the information there. We do hope that we will be a significant player to the Ripple ecosystem. VNX itself is working on both angles, traditional crypto. So we do work with a number of the crypto exchanges such as XT, LBank, Bitstamp, but we also make a significant push to the traditional finance. Our stablecoins are already integrated with Sygnum Bank, one of the leaders of crypto banking in Europe. And customers of Sygnum are able to deposit and withdraw their funds not only in fiat, but also in VNX Euro and VNX CHF. And then they're able, obviously, within the bank, to convert it into fiat Euro or fiat Swiss franc. VNX also works with Cumberland. Cumberland is the largest market maker in crypto. This is one of the largest market makers in traditional finance, in commodities, who started working in crypto back in 2014 and is now one of the largest OTC and market makers for traditional counterparties such as Goldman Sachs, etc., as well as one of the largest partners of the guys like Binance, OKX, etc. So that's the way we're planning to expand, both pushing into other banks, working with Cumberland to expand the coverage of the presence of VNX stablecoins on crypto exchanges, and of course working with different blockchain foundations and different blockchain communities in order to expand our presence in DEXs and different peer-to-peer transfer networks. One of the goals, and I hope many of you are working, is to be in DeFi. What we have found by working with the foundation, other foundations, is that creation of both volatile and non-volatile pools allows actually quite significant synergies to European stablecoins. What is interesting is that creation of different pools with different assets allows then creation of vaults or automatic programs providing liquidity to the DeFi, which then allows us to address asset managers or institutional players within the banking ecosystem in order to ask them or promote to them investment opportunities within the DeFi ecospace. Our big goal is creation of DeFi-based structured products. So all different types of provision of liquidity, yield farming, etc., etc. The big goal is to make it bankable products and then promote it to the customers of traditional banks. It's understandable that stablecoins transfer the value, but the products which generate yield, and the yield in DeFi is significantly higher than the yield in traditional markets, may be very appealing to the customers of those banks, such as Bank Signum, Bank Frick, etc., who are used to the crypto and who do understand the DeFi world and who do understand how the yield is generated in DeFi. And of course, here it's also important to know VNX became probably one of the first European stablecoins that received pricing oracles. Pricing oracles are necessary for lending and borrowing. We do hope to launch our first lending and borrowing products at the moment on other chains, but of course we will be very, very happy to work with guys in this audience who are creating lending and borrowing products on Ripple in order to cooperate and to launch similar products on the Ripple blockchain. VNX has two regulated entities. One is in Luxembourg, one is in Liechtenstein. And we work with a number of the law firms that support us from the legal point of view. What is important to note is that VNX products are fully backed. We work with three banks, Bank Signum, Bank Frick, and Merki Baumann. Two of them are in Switzerland, one is in Liechtenstein. And we keep the reserves in these banks, and they fully back VNX stablecoins. We're audited both by the regulator and by independent regulators, and by the independent auditors, and the results of the audit are available on our site. So anyone who goes to the VNX site can actually visit a site called Transparency, and then they will see the number of the stablecoins which are in generation. They will be able to see by split, by chain, and at the same time be able to download the audit reports. Regarding the gold is actually stored in Liechtenstein in a segregated facility. It's not stored with us, it's stored with an independent vault. And the customers who would like to get physical gold can do so if the withdrawal amount is equivalent to 1 kilogram bars. We keep our gold in 1 kilogram bars. An important point is that VNX received a grant from the Luxembourg government in order to develop the platform. I've seen here during the break Professor Radu State from the University of Luxembourg. Hello, Radu. We work with the University of Luxembourg in audit of our smart contracts and on cybersecurity. And we've been a partner of the university for probably the last 5 years, and we do hope to continue our development. And what is also important to note is that SNT, Security and Trust of the University of Luxembourg, is an important part of the Ripple ecosystem. Therefore, we do hope to enhance our cooperation with both the university and the Ripple ecosystem. This is our current investors. The lead investor of the VNX is VC-backed. The lead investor of the last round was Woori Technology Investments. It's a VC fund from South Korea. Number one in blockchain. They invested and led all rounds for Upbit. It's the largest crypto exchange in South Korea, and we're honored that they invested into us during the last round. Then there are 2 other funds that supported us. And here's the VNX management team. If you have any questions, any of these experts, including myself, will be very happy to answer questions that you might have. But otherwise, we're thrilled to join Ripple ecosystem, and we'll be very, very happy to work with many of you to building fantastic products and to advancing the convergence of blockchain and traditional finance. If you have any questions, I'm quite happy to answer.
Wanted to go back to you talked about Europe. Europe is a place to do business, in particular because of the advanced state of legislation in Europe. But I want to challenge you on that, or go into that. That goes against a lot of what I've observed. People going to Dubai, people going to Singapore, places indeed to escape legislation. The U.S. being favored really rather than Europe because it's so far behind. People can still have fun. People can still do what they want. So again, I'm getting the opposite impression because of my own experience, and if I might say so, you might reveal yourself what you're really up to because you're set up in Luxembourg and in Liechtenstein. Liechtenstein is outside the European Union, not subject to European legislation, to MiCA, although maybe it is as part of EFTA. You can correct me on that. And in any case, Luxembourg within the European Union is, when it comes to individual state regulation, it's among the laxest in financial rules, and that's why all the financial institutions have set up there. So don't you sort of reveal your real motivations by setting yourself up in these lax areas, thus controverting the point that you try to make that regulation is better and it makes people go do business there.
Sure. Thank you very much for your opinion. I mean, for me, I've been in this business for a number of the years. Therefore, when people speak about Dubai, it's nice to hear about it. We actually have, or I set up a regulated proprietary trading entity in Dubai. Therefore, there is a comprehensive legislation, and some of the companies, such as, for example, Paxos, have recently received a license. So most of the people who think that Dubai is a free zone, it was up until last year, but it's not anymore. There's a comprehensive legislation. You should receive the licenses. There is a VARA, which is a virtual asset regulatory authority set up. So Dubai is very, very quickly becoming the place where you need to get licenses. You need to be regulated, etc., etc. Singapore has been in this regime for a number of the years, so it's also not free for all. There are, of course, areas where it's possible to do business in the world without regulation, but they're mostly outside of the traditional. Indeed, USA is one of them, and
it's a big market.
It's a huge market, and I totally agree with you. But what was interesting during this consensus, and it's been very interesting to see the evolution of kind of consensuses over the last 6 years. This consensus, there were a number of the people, including the presidential candidate Kennedy Jr., who was speaking openly at consensus. There were very, very, prominent people running for Senate, a presidential candidate, who were honestly saying that we need, for the US, comprehensive legislation, otherwise we're in danger of falling behind the European Union. So what happened to the European Union? Number one, Liechtenstein is a part of the European Economic Area. It is indeed not part of EU, but the relationship between European Economic Area and EU is that they do not have a chance to vote, but they implement all the legislation, therefore have access to the European market. The reason why we set up there was that they were the first country in Europe to actually adopt a pretty comprehensive legislation called the Blockchain Act in 2020, which in essence, and that's the quote of one of the authors of MiCA, one of the European commissioners, Joachim Schwerin, that used to serve as a blueprint for MiCA. So the reason why we went there is that there was legislative certainty a long time in advance before other European countries actually did it. The reason why we set up in Luxembourg is even more prosaic. I've lived most of my life in Luxembourg, so I just set up a company where I lived. That's a very simple reason. In terms of the legislation, the European legislation is, pretty harmonized. Therefore, there are very, very few ways once the European legislation is taken for member states to go one way or another. It's pretty harmonized. But coming back to the point of Europe now catching up and the point of consensus, if before 2018, 2019, I wasn't in the States for consensus during COVID, I don't know if it was held, but before, coming from Europe and trying to explain that we're European, trying to be regulated, etc., it was like, yeah, come on, go away. No one needs it. This year was actually one of the first where, to me, consensus seemed very regional, so very focused on the US. Many players didn't even attend it, and as they explained, due to the regulatory uncertainty in the US. And two, where many of the speakers, including, as I mentioned, presidential candidates, said that unless the comprehensive legislation is enacted in the US, there's a risk that the innovation will be driven away, which to my point, actually confirms that when the guys like Goldman Sachs, HSBC, big banks or big financial institutions are moving into this place, non-regulatory nature, of course, is possible, but for the big tickets or for financial transactions is not an option. It's just not feasible in the current world. Therefore, I would actually say that the legislation for the leveling up of the blockchain business is good because it allows then introduction to the traditional financial system, and in essence leads for all of us to address a much, much bigger market. That's what we're concerned about, the financial regulations.
Hi, Alexander.
Yes.
Good afternoon. Just a few questions. What exchanges in Europe and in the US are you going to be working with? That's the first question.
For the moment, we work with Bitstamp. It's a European exchange. We do have discussions with a number of other exchanges, but of course, it's mainly commercial discussion. So it's give and take. So
all right, no LCX yet.
Sorry?
No LCX yet.
No.
LCX.
LCX is actually in Liechtenstein. Yes, we've had discussions with them, but for now we're in discussions. No, we haven't decided to be present there.
Fair enough.
Hey guys, just a short question. And so far, I can see the stablecoin market is flourishing so much. There are like new coins coming up. So what makes you better than others? Can you probably put it into sentences or more, whatever you want? But I mean, so many are coming up, and you are there as well. So why should I, as a private user, decide to use your coin instead of a different one?
I think one of the key points would be, indeed, you are correct. I think as an individual, you should be worried, or you should be interested in a number of things. Number one is whether the token generator or stablecoin generator is licensed or not, because that provides some certainty. There are a number of the licensed players as well, although it's pretty limited in the European space. For example, the largest stablecoin issuer, USDT, is not licensed in the European Union. Actually, USDC as well. So there are some questions about whether they will be admitted or not to the exchanges, but regulatory is number one. Number two is to the point of whether it's widely distributed or not. And of course, our goal would be to be widely distributed, because if you can exchange it anywhere, it's good. And the third is the products that you can use. We very, very are focused on working and developing interesting use cases for stablecoins, and therefore, one of the key points for you, let's assume that VNX is comparable to fiat money, is whether you can make money by storing value, yield services, invest into financial products. That's the biggest focus for development of us. So, and once you see that it's a safe investment, it's widely available, and it has interesting investment opportunities, which we hope we will be able to provide, then I do hope that you will choose VNX. Thank you.